Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter Podcast. I'm joined by John Herrick. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well, Thomas. How are you?
I'm good. I was just saying for everyone listening, I was just telling you, John, that I've just had an ice bath. Yeah, I'm feeling fairly mentally sharp without the coffee. So there you go.
Those ice baths are interesting. I've only been in one since I was like a grown adult, and I was in for about 5 minutes, and it was intense. It does do a lot to get the fogginess out of your brain.
Yeah, they do. I know you're from the agency background, John, so I'm taking myself back to when I used to be on-site agency, beers at lunchtime. Like when I think about my health then compared to where it is now, I actually watched I don't know if you follow me, I was watching the thing with Dana White, where Dana White, who runs the UFC, had some really bad health problems. And he met this doctor who said literally had something like 10, 15 years left to live if he carried on the way he was carrying on. And one of the things he implemented, amongst other things, intermittent fasting. You know, I'm sold anyway.
Anything to shock the system. Always a good thing.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, John, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro for the listeners that don't know you. If I get anything wrong, feel free to correct me after, but started off in the recruitment world at a boutique agency back in 2012. You were doing executive recruitment. You were then at another agency in a very senior position at director level. You held a managing director position, VP and director level, another search firm, and again, another VP position. You are currently the global talent acquisition manager with your current employer, and you've been promoted on multiple occasions. So welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's been fun going from the agency side to in-house for the past 5 years. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah, I bet it's good as well. You could probably teach me a thing or two, John, about because I've never seen it from the internal side. And I'm imagining there's probably stuff that both sides don't appreciate from each other. First of all, I can imagine there's some really annoying things that agency side recruiters do to you when you're a global talent acquisition manager.
It's nice to have the perspective of both sides, though. At the end of the day, when you're on the agency side and you're constantly reaching out, it's a numbers game. Eventually, someone's going to say, yes, I need your help today. Or you do something out of the box like you did with me, Thomas. You sent me a video recording and I was like, is this a phishing email? I don't know if I should click on this. And then I looked at you and I was like, oh, okay, no, he seems legit. So I clicked on it and I was impressed. I was like, it was a video message that no one's done before. Caught me by surprise. We're not using agencies at the moment, but would love to connect either way because you never know if things do change or where this may lead down the road. But yeah, I would say, especially being in-house, I usually try to respond when somebody reaches out because, yeah, it's never a bad thing. Hey, right now we can't use agencies. I've got a team of 4 individuals we're working right now, so we're pretty set, but things could change and you want to keep that door open. What I found on the agency side, a lot of times it's either crickets, no response, or you get that kind of, yeah, we don't use agencies, and they just slam the door and you're like, okay, now I'll move on. But yeah, it is funny to see from both sides how things can go positive or negative in several different ways.
Yeah, I think it's just getting the balance. You know what it's like, John. I could have sent you that video on a different day and something could have gone wrong. Someone could have approached me trying to sell me something if I've just had an argument with a family member 10 minutes before or something like that. I always think you just never quite... Someone once told me in the very early days, like they were like, Tom, it's never personal. Like it's just how you catch that person at that time. And I think that's so true, even though sometimes it definitely does feel personal, but apparently it never is.
That is a hard part of the business. We go through, obviously, 90% of it's rejections versus an actual hire. And people take it very personal when they don't get the job or they don't get the interview. It's hard to coach and train people in that direction and say, hey, sometimes there's 1,000 different things that can happen, whether the job's put on paused or they found somebody else or they are in late stages and fell in love with somebody. So many things can happen. When you get, especially with LinkedIn, because as you move from job to job, like from my first agency job, and I have messages that date back to then, which is 13 years ago. And it's funny, I have some of those nasty messages that come back, whether it be somebody that was interviewing for me or for an employer. And you're like, whoa, now I remember this individual. And you're like, yeah, not going to work together. Appreciate it. So my advice to both sides of the business is keep it as cordial as possible and keep that door open because you never know who your next boss will be or your next placement.
Yeah, 100%. And do you know what I was going to say, John? You really made me smile when you said that, because we never all know when we're going to need each other, really, because the market is cyclical. Sometimes it's client-led, sometimes it's candidate-led, and you just never know when you're going to need each other. So that's one reason to be nice. Also, it is actually just quite nice to be nice to each other. It's nice. And it's like, you made me laugh there because I've got some messages in my inbox where I was messaging candidates in 2021 and 2022, post-COVID hiring boom, when we were just like grateful to get a candidate on the phone. It was just ridiculous, wasn't it? And I've got some messages there where they'd message back saying, I don't use a recruiter, leave me. And then, of course, they've been laid off and they're asking for a call. And you think, I'm still taking the calls. And you never know when we're all going to need each other. So I think it pays to be nice, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think also, too, for the interview process, it's more conversational. I always find it, and I've coached some of my hiring managers where it's like, hey, when you come across or a little too direct and not speaking with the individual and having that discovery moment of why they're there and what experience they have that's relevant and why I, as a recruiter, pushed them forward to interview with you. And I'm like, whoa, God, what happened? And then they walk me through what issues arose, what kind of questions were asked, specific things that were brought up that were, I don't want to say inappropriate, but maybe could have been spoken about differently. And then it's my job to go back to the hiring manager, but hey, got some feedback. It goes both ways. You want to make sure somebody's coming in to interview for the job, of course, but they're interviewing us as well. And that feedback goes out into the internet. Let's be honest. People go on LinkedIn and post stuff or Glassdoor. You don't want people having a poor candidate experience. And that's something I think we all have to look at full circle for this process and make sure that it's enjoyable for everybody. And at the end of the day, not everyone's going to get the job. One thing I would have to say is I feel bad, but being in-house, not just necessarily policy driven, but also just overall, it's like, we're not career coaches. As much as like, I'll try to give somebody like, hey, sorry, we couldn't move forward with you at this time. And they're like, can you give me reasons why? It's kind of hard to say somebody they just liked better. How do you relay that message? It's like, sometimes it's apples to oranges. Two people sit down, they click. Sometimes they don't. And it's, do you want to get personal with somebody like that? No. So it's like, you can't really relay that message.
Yeah, I think at the minute, John, it's like I'm noticing that on the candidate side, it's basically like whole opposite of 2021 and 2022. There's obviously so many people on the market. And I had a conversation yesterday with my operations manager because I said, I'm getting all these people reaching out to me basically for coffee chats. And we're a retained agency and clients are paying us a chunk of the fee up front. And when they do that, it's great, but make no mistake about it, they want everything delivered on time, in full, great candidates. It's not like working contingent or no one name. You have to provide a phenomenal delivery service. If it was just 1 or 2 a week, I'd do it. But when you're talking like 5, 6, 10 a day, if I did that, we just wouldn't have a business in 6 months' time. So it's difficult at the minute, trying to keep all the candidates happy. It's not easy, mate, is it, at the moment?
No. And what we run into, so we have certain cycles, especially with the sales teams, right? So we'll have a big hiring clip where we're hiring 10, 15 individuals in a month. And then we just had one to pause for a minute. We're probably going to revamp it somewhere in October. But I had all these candidates lined up and my team were ready to go. And it's like, hey, guys, just pause for a minute. It's going to come back. And they're like, why did they pause it? And you're like, it's just so many things that come into play. It could be budget. It could be headcount. We're looking at a slower time period right now. So delaying it by a month is going to help us out. And I give you credit for having as many coffee chats as you can because that's 20 minutes, a half hour each clip. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah, sometimes it is just too much because I work insane hours anyway and I haven't got kids or anything at the moment, but I was thinking like if I did have 2 or 3 little ones running around or something like that, like enough now, like I was imagining like if I really wanted to genuinely have some balance, which at some stage I'm sure I will, it's like you just can't do it. You have to draw the line somewhere. I'm thinking about a really nice templated response, probably pointing them towards the podcast episodes like this episode and other episodes to try and help that way, or maybe trying to do a few YouTube videos that can actually be good advice for anyone on the market because the advice is fairly similar to people on the market. So you could probably do some nice videos.
Sure. Especially now, we don't use AI in terms of scanning resumes. I feel like it eliminates a lot of individuals. If we're looking for a 5 to 7 year person, also a 12-year person comes across great experience, but it's in the price range. It could be due to location or whatever it might be. I don't find that as a tool that helps me right now. That could very much change. I think just as far as a Control F search function for candidates, I think it's so important that if you're going to submit a resume, whether it be through a recruiter or through their own application, which rather go through a recruiter, right? Having those keywords line up. I think it's so important. If I'm looking for an email automation manager and you don't have the word email in your entire resume, it's hard. If I'm looking at 100 plus resumes, am I really going to go dive in depth into your resume to make sure you have emails in there? I think that's such a key point that people might forget. And working with a recruiter, usually you're somebody that's going to turn around and say, hey, John, your resume looks great, but I know you do this, but it's not really mentioned heavily in the resume. Can we move it up a bullet point or two? And I know you always do that on the agency side. And that's why you want to use a recruiter because it helps with little tidbits that helps me from being in-house, recognizing a good profile that maybe you didn't present the information as best as possible.
Yeah, those keywords in, because sometimes as well, get the impression with yourself, John, but I get the impression you're probably like me, like you're quite technical as far as recruiters go. Don't get me wrong, we're not out there hacking every day, but for recruiters, we're pretty technical. But I noticed some folks, like you said, they're scanning for keywords, and if the keywords aren't there, especially if you're looking through a lot of applications, if the keywords aren't there, you might have, I Googled the average time that people look at a resume. I think it's like 4 seconds, 5 seconds if you're busy. So if they're not on there, it's just on to the next one.
And that's the problem, right? Because don't get me wrong, I'm glad always to see people applying. When we make those posts, whether it be LinkedIn or Indeed or all those, we're paying a lot of money to do that, right? The problem is over 90% of them are not relevant. Whether it be I'm hiring an attorney and they don't have a JD, and you're sitting there and you're like, necessary in order to be an attorney in the United States, we need a JD. Or if you're hiring a SOC analyst and there's a specific system that, have you worked with Linux or not? And they're like, hey, you want to dive into it. If that's not in there, I have to sift through all the other people who are doing jobs that aren't relevant that are applying. It gets daunting. And we're not getting just 100 applicants, we're getting 200-300 applicants for each posting easily. So yeah, like you said, it's definitely helpful to have that kind of in-tune resume that pops out to me. Hey, this is the direct kind of role you're looking for. I can always finagle with a couple of years of experience or something that maybe is a little off. That's okay. But having that direct experience, that the systems that need to be utilized or the degrees or whatever it might be that needs to hit home, it's so important to have that in there and make sure that pops for somebody like me.
Yeah, cool, John. I'm going to ask you in a few moments, my friend, about you've been promoted multiple times in your current position. So it'd be nice to dive into how you've done that. There'll be other talent acquisition people listening to this, senior recruiter level, and they want to get up to some kind of management position within TA. So it'd be nice to hear how you've got up to that level. Just before I do that, I'm just going to come back to something you said about 5 minutes ago about dealing with the technical hiring managers when perhaps the interview is prim and proper as it should be. I'm imagining a lot of what you have to do sometimes is not being a yes man or a yes woman and making sure that this is probably a bit of an art form or a bit of a skill, I'm imagining, but is it a bit of a balancing act to try and push back against the hiring managers whilst keeping the relationship? Is that quite tricky?
Sure. I would say the biggest thing is to over communicate ahead of time, right? I'm not going to go to a candidate being an in-house recruiter and have them spruce up their resume unless it's like, I've had those 10 pagers that come across. No one's going to read 10 pages, right? Nobody has the time. Let's shrink it down to 2, maybe 3 pages. But outside of that, if I get on a call because I look at someone's LinkedIn and their resume and I'm like, it looks like they do this, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll get on a call with somebody to figure that out. We use Slack and email or whatever it might be to communicate with the hiring managers. And I'm always pointing out like, hey, not on there, but here's X, Y, and Z. So if they go into that interview and they come out and they're like, well, you really don't have that experience. I'm like, did you dive into it? Like I had that happen with the full stack developer that was needed AI focus. They didn't have AI in the resume, but they developed their own AI. They've been working with AI. They've used it. It's just something that they didn't put in their professional resume. And I was like, it's worth revisiting this. The hiring manager did turn back, had another conversation with them.
Okay.
It went well. It wasn't the hire. There was just somebody that fit it better, but it did revisit the conversation. It did go well. And they ended up progressing forward into another round. So for in-house recruiters, I think it's always good to have a over communication kind of ability, but also when you push back, nobody wants to hear like, hey, you missed something. This is what I had in my notes. Is it worth revisiting? At the end of the day, and put the ball in their court. If the hiring manager wants to revisit it, great. If they don't, but at least to be able to present that information. Because if it's somebody that you're going to push, it better be somebody that's going to move forward in the process. Or not saying they're definitely getting an offer, but they should be moving to that next level. They should be somebody you're pushing back on. That's middle of the road. It's got to be somebody acceptable.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point because if you push back, you've got to be sure it'll be the last time you're able to push back, won't it? And the key thing, you've obviously dug deep on the screening and really had a good chat with that candidate. And it goes back to being sure you've really made sure that you're in a position to push back and screen them well.
Absolutely. And notes are so key. If you don't have an applicant tracking system, Excel is great, but those ATSs, you got to use them. And I'm heavy on the notes. Just because you know what happens in the final hour. Someone's, I'm looking for 100K. And all of a sudden they get there like, well, now I'm really looking for 120. What happened? We talked about this 3 weeks ago. What changed? Yeah, no, it's always important to have those in-depth notes to refer back to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a bit of a confidence thing as well. I had it with, I won't name them, but really large client in California, huge internal recruitment team. And they knocked back I'd sent it over and I'd interviewed the chap myself. And I said, listen, he's a phenomenal pen tester. I've known this guy for years. And again, it didn't actually get the hire, but it did warrant an interview and it was a decent interview. But again, it's just having done, if you've got the knowledge in and around what you're recruiting for, that really helps, mate, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because there's no pen test that's the same. There's always changes and switches, and somebody who can pivot and understand how to approach it is so important. So especially in that space, pen testers, you have to know what this person doing, what they're capable of doing, because it's not always going to be on paper written out exactly how they go through the process. It's understanding what they can do. And obviously you did that with that candidate, and that's important.
Yeah. Cool. All right, my friends. You've worked your way up really nicely to a management position, transitioned successfully from agency side over to TA, and then got promoted. Is it twice or three times you've been promoted to where you are?
Technically, I came in as a senior corporate recruiter, and then I moved into the management position.
Any reason you think that happened, or any key learnings that you could share with the listeners on that front?
Sure. I think at the end of the day, you have to build up the trust with the hiring managers. I always do intake calls. I don't just take an email and go, okay, this is what we're hiring for, and then start searching. I really am like, hey, you got 15 minutes to sit down and go through, 75% of the must-haves need to be there. And you're never going to get 100%. It's pretty rare. So understanding the needs of the team too, because it's usually a balancing act. There's somebody who's great, it might be a SOC analyst, one that handles one aspect, but now you're looking to bring on somebody else to complement them. All right, so what are the must-haves that we have? Because if I'm just looking at SOC analysts across the board, I'm just going to present whatever looks good and then move forward. It might not be appropriate for that hire. So I think one, sitting down with the hiring managers, getting the must-haves, knowing exactly what they need, what the experience must be. I think secondly, a lot of people put a posting up and wait for applicants. I'm actively searching. My in-mails are 100 plus a week easily. Almost all of my placements I've had in the past 5 years in-house is somebody I actively sought out. It's not somebody who's applying. So it's really important to not just sit back and wait, read resumes as they come through, actively get out there and look for people. Because a lot of times it's those who are passively looking that end up being the best candidates. I think that also takes a little stress off in the interview process. They're like, I don't need a job, I have one. So they tend to interview better. At the end of the day, I think time to fill is one of the reasons why I got promoted. My boss will probably agree with me on that. In my review process, it's always one of those, you're always going to have delays. With certain hiring managers, summertime is impossible to get people aligned for interviews. But when it comes down to in the heavy time of the year, like right now, and then of course in the spring, I'm somewhere between 32 and 36 days of opening a search that I close it. I try not to let it linger for 2-3 months. If it starts going that way, I usually reach out to the powers that be to be like, hey, what's going on here? They've interviewed 12 people and liked everyone. They went to final rounds, but we're not moving forward with an offer. Are we delaying this? Is there an issue? And it's come down to that a couple of times where it's like maybe the hiring manager is just not ready to pull the trigger and move forward. And as I mentioned earlier, communicating effectively. I think at the end of the day, you don't want to be rude or curt with somebody and say, hey, what are you doing? You're wasting my time. Comments like that never work, I think, in the corporate world. It's more so let me understand where we are, what we're doing. If there needs to be a delay in the process, let me just communicate that with the candidates so that if we're going to lose somebody, which happens a lot, you're like, I like this person, but I want to see 5 more people. I always turn around, that's great, but understand that this person's interviewing. If they're interviewing with us, they're out there interviewing elsewhere. So there's a good chance we're going to lose this person. So if you really love them, let's try to have them interview 1 or 2 more people just to keep them warm. But you might want to jump on it if they're the one. And that's sometimes, I think, hard for hiring managers to understand. They think, oh, we're the best company ever. Why would they want to work anywhere else? Look, I love my company where I am now, but if somebody offered me $50K more to be somewhere else, it's going to be an honest consideration. So I think that's important for hiring managers to understand too. But yeah, in terms of the progression of my career here, I think one of the benefits I had in the agency side, I took on a lot of global companies. So I did hire elsewhere. So when I came here, my company is based out of Israel, but we had offices and remote workers throughout the globe, as we had talked in our previous conversation, South Africa, India, UK. When you're hiring for these other areas, it's different culture-wise, the way people have conversations. So I think that was something that helped with the leg up because I started hiring in these other places along with the whole team. And I think I was just more successful on that end, that I was able to understand the different personalities that come through from different cultures and just be able to link those together. So I'd say keep your head down as a recruiter. Don't wait for resumes to come in. Actively search. Stay organized. Take heavy notes. Don't have a conversation, put 3 or 4 bulleted points. You should have an understanding of this person and where they're coming from. At the end of the day, I know nobody wants to call it, but we are involved in some type of sales, we'll call it, right? Discovery is the most important part of sales, right? Why is this person having a conversation with you? I think that's something you got to have throughout the recruitment process. If you're onboarding them and you're getting to those final hours, they might get cold feet. And maybe it's not the right position for them. And that's okay too. Sometimes you have to turn around. Hey, if you're afraid to jump or you've got another offer that came through and it's a better one, take the other offer. I'll get somebody else. I'll never strong arm somebody into a position. It never works out at the end. I learned that on the agency side. I had an old boss of mine a long time ago, strong armed a candidate of mine into a role. She took it and she was gone within 3 months. And so we didn't get that fee. And now that client's looking at us like, why are they only here 3 months? And we're like, we don't know. So I think it's always important to understand, have that discovery. You're here because you want to progress your career. You're looking into a management position, or you're looking to get into a different industry. What is it that's getting you there? Is it money? A lot of times it is. And if it's money, okay, this is what they're offering. Is this in your range? If it's not, let's have an honest conversation, because I don't think they're going to budge, or will they budge? And what can we get you to? Can we get there? Is that an honest conversation to have? Then yes. But let's face it, money's usually a big driver. Work-life balance, you were talking about earlier. Remote work, let's face it, most people would prefer to be remote. A lot of hiring managers are doing that hybrid model, or back into the office. So I'm starting to see a lot of candidates that are coming. They're like, hey, are you guys remote? We used to be. We're now in a hybrid model. I think that's something that candidates have to have a true, honest conversation with themselves or their spouse or whoever it is, to be like, can I be remote? Or can I actually go back in the office? Is it logistically possible? Because I think being open will just have a lot more opportunities for a candidate to consider. But yeah, I think through my career, it's just being honest with both sides, understanding where everyone's coming from, so that when you get to that final hour, there's no negotiation. It's, I got you what you wanted. This is what we were looking for. I'm well over 95% of offer letters I've sent out have been signed and accepted. So I think that's another number too, besides time to fill, acceptance rate. I want to push and say I'm 99, but I'm probably off. There's definitely been one or two throughout the 5 years. So maybe it's 98 or 97. But I think that acceptance rate is something that the bosses looked at and they said, oh, you don't have people signing offer letters, not showing up on day one. I think that helps big time too.
Yeah, there's loads of wicked stuff there, John. Thanks, mate. Do you know what someone said to me once as well early on? They said, it's asking the questions that you don't want to know the answers to early on in the process. And that's basically what you've just said then, because you're right. If you get to the end of the process and the offer's going out and it's not getting accepted, like you say, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be the odd occasion. But yeah, generally speaking, if an offer's going out, you want to know it's going to be accepted. But John, loads of wicked stuff there. So basically qualifying the roles really well with the technical hiring managers. Hunting down passive talent is always the best option. By the way, could not agree more. Like, I found that passive talent, just their retention rates are so much longer, so much so that we started giving a 12-month warranty with our searches, because I just looked at everything we'd done on passive and people were just sticking around for a long time. Time to fill was something you tracked. Basically, if a role isn't getting filled, you proactively go and this role's not getting filled. What's going on? I think a lot of people in that situation would maybe try and sweep it under the carpet, or, oh God, I have noticed this. Whereas you're actually, back to your point of over communicating, you actually back to your stakeholders and guys, like, what's going on? Is this me? Is this you? Is this both of us? What's going on? And I think that's major. You know?
I always tell the hiring managers, and it works for any city, but me being in New York, I'm like, we've got thick skin. Don't be afraid to tell me. Because at the end of the day, the quicker you tell me, the faster I can adjust my sales and get it in the right direction. Yeah. And I think that's important too for hiring managers. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, John, you're sending me a lot of people that are really junior for this role. We want them to be a team lead. Like, I need somebody with some sort of managerial experience or training experience. I think that's important, because if you let 2 weeks go by, that's 2 weeks that I'm sourcing the wrong candidate. And that's what you want to avoid. And I think when we look at timing and getting things done, that's a very important aspect.
Yeah, definitely. You made me laugh there, John, because you talked about cultures there, about UK and South Africa and the US, but even within the US, like culturally, like people, and like, we got clients in the West Coast, East Coast, Texas, everywhere, different people. You're right. Like, I've got one client in New York and he was asking me, this was years ago, and he was like, Tom, why didn't we hire that person? And I was like, look, I'll tell you, but just please don't say anything to the VP, because I just don't, I'm getting on really well with him and he's my direct point. I'd known the founder longer, and the founder was like putting me on this, and I was like, told him, and he was like, what? He just rang the VP, and I was like, no, like, you promised me you weren't going to say anything. And I was like, typical New Yorker.
There's no beating around the bush. I think that was one of my first reviews. It was like, hey, John, your Slack messages are a little short. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm trying to get some approval done. And they're like, how about a good morning? How are you? I hope you had a nice week. And I was like, oh, I'm really bad at that. Sorry. I'm usually just like, hey, this is ready to go. This is the comp. Are we ready to sign off?
Because, John, I've got a client just outside New York, and I apologized to them once because I'd basically sent an email without saying hello or anything. They were like, what? Like, they didn't even register. That subject just changed. Like, yeah, God, I do quite like that. Really, if you understand it and that's just the way it is, like, it's not a bad way just to get stuff done. I don't mind.
Sense of urgency. When you're on the agency side, your time is literally money. So you need to fill as many roles as possible this year. If you're just literally trying to get something done, Being direct, I think, has an effect. And Israelis are the same way too, which I always appreciate. Very direct, forward about everything. They really don't hold back. And I think that's the best way to do it when it comes to this business.
The other thing is as well, if that small talk becomes too much, it becomes a bit disingenuous because it's like, you don't really care about that thing that I did 3 weeks ago. You just like, and it almost goes a bit the other way.
Yeah. I went and saw Oasis 2 weeks ago at Giant Stadium. It came up in a big meeting and everyone's been asking about it. I'm like, it was fantastic. So anyway, what do you want me to say? I was just in the stands, drinking some beers and enjoying a phenomenal band. You should go check them out. It does get a little disingenuous.
Cool. So basically, the fourth point, proactively approaching internal stakeholders within the business if stuff isn't getting quick enough. Communicate effectively ties in quite nicely with what we've just said. Heavy note-taking, really good initial discovery calls. Some of this stuff, note-taking and stuff like that, and the discovery, sometimes refer to it as qualifying the hiring manager, but that is absolutely game-changing. And you've probably had this over the years. You get a hiring manager that, they almost just want to get off that call quick, or sometimes they don't even want to do that call. And we can't work this. If you're not prepared to jump on the phone for me, have a chat, I'm not sure we can work the search because we're just going to waste everyone's time. And I think it's like that discovery piece, especially if it's a brand new role you've never worked before, like asking good questions and having that properly is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Personalities, I think, come into play more than we really think. When somebody's going to hire, especially if it's in office, if you're going to have to sit next to this person and coach them or train them, or you're looking to progress them through a career, personality goes a long way. I think a lot of times people go into an interview just trying to be prim and proper and let your personality shine. Get in there and have that conversation. Don't be afraid to get in the nitty gritty. And when you talk about managers, a lot of times tell us the best thing you did and tell us the worst thing you did and how'd you learn from that. I was a pitcher. I loved playing baseball. I remember every single home run hit against me. I don't remember any of my wins. I think in sports, it translates well because you learn from your failures. And I think that's important from a recruiter or from a candidate's perspective. When you come in, if you're a pen tester, tell me a time you failed. When did it not work? Especially you're working the red hat side. Let's talk about that. That's an important phase to get into because you've been on the blue team for so long. You switched over. What happened? Where was the aha moment? You should be able to bring that up in a conversation, good, bad, or the ugly. You need to talk about it. Yeah, I think that's always important too.
One thing I find on the effective communication piece, I just think this is so important. One thing I do with my clients is some clients, this is literally scheduled on the diary for 5 minutes a week or 15 minutes a week. While the search is still active, every 7 days, we just literally get on a video call. And some of them are in for 15, and we're literally like, everything cool, yeah, sweet, and you booked it, yeah, okay. I just find that's absolutely game changer. Like in terms of like time to fill, just making sure you're both on the same page.
Definitely, because a lot of people are afraid to put things in writing. So I think having that little touch base once a week just to be like, hey, John, that was an interesting interview. I know you had a great conversation, but they came across as a dud in mine. I can't move forward with somebody that I can't get to know personally. Then that's something you get to learn. It's like, all right, really got to make sure we focus on that side of it, or have the candidates understand and go in, be prepared to talk about whatever that's important that the hiring manager might want to dive into.
I think as well on the, if it is something that could potentially be like playing with people's emotions, if you like, stuff can come across wrong on email. Like sometimes I find myself trying to rewrite an email. I'm like, especially if I'm like directing with a client and maybe it's a new client and we just won them and I'm like wanting to really keep the relationship at the forefront. And I'm like, sometimes it's so hard to write an email in that neutral tone. Maybe I should be using AI more for stuff like that. I don't know. But like sometimes it's just easiest to get on the phone.
Oh, yeah. And you know what, too? It's funny. The more senior individuals that I deal with, they tend to make the time. They'll jump on a 5-minute call with you, like a general counsel or a chief compliance officer or a chief operations officer. They'll be like, yeah, I can find 5 minutes for you to jump on a call. It's the lower level ones that tend to, I don't have time. And you're like, come on, literally 5 seconds. Just a quick back and forth about what's going on, just to make sure we get everything done right so we're not wasting each other's time. That's a very important thing to do. And I think that more recruiters need to make sure they do that, whether you're agency side or in-house. I think both sides need to do that. That's important.
Yeah. Do you know what? What you just said there, mate, so true about the further you go up the chain. Because I think as well, if you've been promoted and you've got up to a management level or a director level or a VP level, it's very hard to get up to those positions unless you're a nice guy or a nice girl, because people have got to have wanted to see you do well, and they've got to have wanted to, probably multiple people have probably got to have wanted to promote you and all agreed that they like you and you do a good job and things like that. And I noticed that I can remember the first time I ever got my hands on a director or a VP search.
There's fewer of them out there, which is important. You have to have a certain gravitas to make it to those levels. And the ones that don't have that gravitas that got promoted, find that out in that first 2-3 minutes on a call. You can tell. I've had a couple of those director level people, you get on a call and you're like, ooh, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And it's like culture wise, you can see it, but you're right. Most of them are in a good position for a good reason. So it's always good to have those searches, and hopefully you have more of those, especially on the retained side, right?
I think they are easier to work, but I think you use the word gravitas there on the recruiter side as well. I know if me and you were talking to direct, it'd be fine, but you do need to be at a certain seniority level, and you do need to have a certain amount of commercial awareness, because otherwise you just wouldn't be able to hold a conversation with someone like that. So whilst I do think they're easier and those people are nicer to deal with, yeah, you do need to have done the job for a while, don't you? A few grey hairs, mate, in the beards, I think.
It's probably stress, I'm guessing, but yeah, no, it's definitely important. I think Google's your best friend. At the end of the day, I never really did the tech space. Prior to here, I had some clients that would need cybersecurity professionals that I could turn around and say, hey, I turned to the team that was on the agency side. I'm like, I'm doing the legal compliance work, but in some finance accounting, could you do this? And they'd be sure, and I'd be the point of contact. But when I came in here, I was like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. And I had to start Googling. And it's pretty amazing. If you just do a little research, you can jump into a call, like for accounting purposes, VLOOKUP, pivot tables, all the stuff that's in Excel. Do I know how to do it? No. But do I know how to identify somebody who knows how to do it? Yes. And I think that's the important part for a recruiter when you start looking at roles. And don't be afraid to say, hey, if you can pick up a role and work on it, do some research before you jump on a call with that hiring manager. This way you can speak towards it. Have an understanding of what are the key words that are going to come out in a conversation that says this person can do it. So that when you move them forward, you're not presenting somebody that's going to fall short on the technical side. I think that's all.
Yeah, and you're right, John. We're living in the age of the internet, and I think it's surprising. Like you doing there what you just described, I bet straight away that puts you in the top at 5-10%, because so many recruiters just won't do that, and they'll just try and fudge their way through it. But like you say, with Google or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is, there's no excuse now. You can just learn so much so quick. Another thing I found, when you get a really nice candidate on the phone, it's really surprising just how much they'll teach you. And when you ask someone to teach you about something that they are genuinely very passionate about, perhaps they've dedicated their life to it, it's surprising how much people are willing to help you. I found over the years on the candidate side, the candidates can be your ultimate Google, if you like.
So we have deferred revenue is a big thing, which a lot of businesses rely on. So in the United States, US, there's this rules that are followed by the ASC 606. So I did some Google into it. It gets very technical, and I was like, oh boy. One of the first clients I was bringing on board, I was like, yeah, so it says on your LinkedIn profile, ASC 606, deferred revenue. I have an idea. You can't recognize the revenue appropriately. And just as you mentioned, I had this great candidate that walked me through the entire process. And it's like the AR and AP side, and how, God forbid, you need to refund money, that you don't want to be paying bills with money that you have to refund now. So it was interesting to get that education. Like you said, it's candidates that they will open up. And then don't be afraid to be like, hey, this is first or second time I'm working on a role, have an idea, but walk me through how it's relevant to the role and what it does. And yeah, most people will open up. They're not afraid to talk.
Yeah. Just listening to you talk then, I bet one of the things, you're getting so much more exposure to different types of roles, which must be quite interesting. Because whilst for me it is great, I'm just doing cybersecurity stuff all day long, and like I can move quick on it, and it's nice, but I'm doing the same stuff all the time. Whereas you're doing stuff there that I've never even heard of. It must be quite interesting as well.
Keep you on your toes. Keep you on your toes. So, yeah, no, it's great too, because I did get siloed for quite some time, just doing like you did with cybersecurity. I was just doing legal compliance, did some accounting, but legal and compliance was my bread and butter. So coming in here, I've hired every single department. Outside of a janitor, I've literally hired everybody. Nice getting exposed to all those different areas, because you see the different types of personalities that come through each kind of workspace. Your industry can vary too. If you're in pharmaceuticals versus financial institutions, there's different types of personalities that come across, but finance and accounting people, completely different worlds. I always thought they were the same thing. It's no, the finance guy who's going to get the fundraising, that's the CFO, is very different than the head of accounting. I'm down on the tech side. Yeah. Managers and the directors, very different personalities than the stock analyst one that's coming in that's never done it before.
Do you find, John, when it's a brand new role, because the only thing I can relate it to is one of my really good clients, he's the founder, he's the chairman now, he rang me up and he was like, Tom, we need an FP&A manager. I said, I'll be honest with you, I said, I've never recruited one, but I said, I bet I could. And what I found is once I'd got through a certain amount of interviews, I could really quickly tell what good looked like. I'd done my research, I'd gone on Google. I think I was on maybe interview number 10 or 15, and I was getting a real good vibe for what good looked like. And that was basically how I found my way through it. And we placed it. So that's the other thing I can relate it to is you just start, once you've seen a few people, you can pick it up, can't you?
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things too. You don't want to be like a little kid with a brand new puppy. You get your first candidate in, you're like, oh, and you go run into the hiring manager and then like they flop. You want to sometimes in those scenarios interview 5-10 people and then look back at your notes and say, oh, wow, these were my top 3. And those are the ones you present instead of just presenting everybody and seeing what works on their end. Because yes, I think once you start interviewing, you get to understand financial modeling as an FP&A manager, what kind of work they've been doing and what kind of systems they've utilized. And are they using Tableau or Click for their dashboards? And are they presenting? Or are they not presenting to the board? It's definitely something, you're right. And that's a great example because, yeah, going from the tech world into FP&A, kudos for placing that.
Yeah, no, it is. And cool, John, the last question I ask is, what's your favorite watched book or podcast of the most positive impact on your career? Just before we go on to that one, though, I love the fact that you do loads of proactive outreach to passive candidates because I am the biggest advocate for that. Like LinkedIn, like literally hit me up all the time trying to sell me job advert packages, and it doesn't matter how good the sales rep is, like they just won't, because I'm just such a big believer in your network and reaching out to candidates proactively. So I know you mentioned LinkedIn Recruiter, we've got that as well. Any kind of things on the proactive outreach that you do that could maybe help recruiters and folks listening?
Sure. Referrals, you'd be amazed how many people. I stay in touch with a lot of candidates that I placed 13 years ago, or people I spoke to and never placed. I actually have several individuals that I'll meet up for a couple beers or a lunch or dinner once in a while. Never placed them, but always kept in touch, always talked. And people are always willing to refer individuals. The good ones are, I should say.
Yeah.
I think having a network of individuals that you can reach out to and say, hey, I'm in the tech space in Texas. I've never hired cybersecurity people in Dallas, Houston, or Austin. Knowing a couple people in that city, whether they're directly in that space or not, you'd be amazed. A quick outreach and say, hey, just got this new role in. It's with this client. They're looking for somebody that maybe they're not directly in the space, but you might know. A lot of people will turn around and say, oh yeah, hold on a second. I have a buddy that's in tech and he's in Austin. Let me connect you to him. He might know some people. It's funny too, my job postings, which kind of goes back to LinkedIn, I guess, but I can't tell you how many people, I always put my face on there because I'm like, a lot of people will turn around and be like, my sister's looking for a job in Maryland. Hold on. And I'm like, yeah. So don't be afraid to have those conversations with people in your network because they want to help their friends too and their family members. I think that's a big thing that people forget. It's not just transactional on LinkedIn, sending messages and finding somebody. It's talking to people in those cities that you're hiring for or in the industries and say, hey, pharmaceutical industry, you've been working at Novartis for how many years? Do you know anybody that does this? A lot of people will turn around and make that connection. So I'd say don't be afraid to do that. I think people appreciate it both ways, and it helps us build our network and find the right people.
Yeah, the thing about knowing people, I get it all the time when people come on this pod and they go on the YouTube channel, they go, I went to school with her and I went to school with her. And it's frightening out, especially in the security community, that like everyone knows everyone, but in general, about the world's smaller than you think. But yeah, cool. So you could podcast, John, or book or online content. It doesn't have to be recruitment related. It could be about just anything that's maybe made you the best version of yourself. It can be recruitment related if you want it to be, but just any book or pod that could help the listeners that you've really enjoyed, mate.
Oh, wow. I'd say my most recent kind of book genre I've been into, I love survival stuff. So I love learning about eating edible plants and things like that. It brings you back to that. I always like Latin as a language, getting back into the scientific language and learning stuff. And I'm not going to go out foraging mushrooms anytime soon because there's so many dangerous ones out there, but It's an interesting thing to learn. So that's been something I'd say the trend for the past 2-3 years that I got into. I have gardens. I like to hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff. So it's learning something new that I was always taught to, you see a berry, don't eat it. But now I'm starting to learn how to do it in certain ways and how you can approach it. It's not that it's necessarily relative to recruiting, but I think as we were talking earlier, getting into different spaces and genres to hire for, just exposing me to different languages and having that understanding of, oh, I can break down, because I know Latin a little bit, how I can break down certain scientific things that they're talking about, these plants. Podcast-wise, I would say, you're going to laugh, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I like it because the format of that show is so chilled with it, but it works big time, doesn't it?
And he's very smart, and he knows when to take a step back and let somebody say their piece because they know it. But I'm baffled by Grant. He's Ancient Apocalypse, I think it's called. He had a Netflix show and talking about societies and civilizations and how like we don't know how some of these pyramids were built and things like that. And that always blows me away. I'm like,
Yeah.
they found it in a stone that's dated more than 10,000 years ago. When did we start really using tools? So I'd say that's always an interesting one I like to log into. But yeah, and now you, Thomas.
Hey, don't forget about this one.
I got really excited. I think it was one of the first ones I clicked on. I probably watched about 20 or so of them, but you were talking about making your resume 3D. I was sitting there for a second. I was like, that's an interesting point. And I think it's an important one, that don't just be a blank resume that gets sent in there and you're just like everyone else. If there's a link that they could click on, what drew me to you when you sent me a video, and I was like, oh, a personalized video asking about, I'm like, I can't use you right now as a third party, but happy to jump on a call and here we are now in another conversation. But I would say, that making your resume 3D and having something more than just a piece of paper someone's reading, something they can refer to, whether it be a portfolio of work you can reference to, or a podcast or a LinkedIn conversation that you had that you're going back and forth and debating something. I see a lot of the recruiter stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to get in the mix because sometimes it gets a little ugly. But nonetheless, having something that's outside of just the resume that people can reference to, and you put it on your resume, a hyperlink that they can go to and say, oh, here's Thomas talking about recruiting and why you should use a third party or especially a retained search, and how it's so much elevated versus a contingent or a container. So I think that was an important thing that I pulled from your podcast, was that making your resume a third dimension.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think as time goes on, it just puts a force field around your career growth and your career progression. And in today's world and today's market, I think having some sort of a brand, even doing things like this, you coming on there today, this is a reference point. I think everyone should be doing this. If we're not traveling as much anymore and commuting enough anymore, we've all got that extra time. And you've just got it forever. It's like a digital force field around your career. It's a good move. And it's good fun as well. Enjoyed this. Sitting away chat doesn't really feel like work. It's really nice.
I've been remote, so I talk to my boss all the time and my colleagues remotely, but talking to somebody on the outside about strategies and how you go about things, it makes you rethink things and possibly come across something new for the resume. Never thought of it until you brought it up, so I appreciate it. It's always good to learn something new.
With you, John. Thanks, my friend. That was a good chat. I've really enjoyed chatting. It's been a really nice, good, relaxed, natural, conversational episode. I've enjoyed it, mate, so thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate the consideration for coming on here, so thank you so much, Thomas.
Cheers, buddy.
Take care.